element
So
is
any work that we do, you will need to test it to certify that it is
okay.
on
Good. So first thing, imagine yourself in a thick African jungle, and the weather is nice and you're feeling good. Everything is nice. Butterflies here and there, nice smell. Are you there already? Yeah? Mild sun, nothing to bother you, everything is good. And you're hearing gentle sounds in the distance and light vibrations on the floor. In minutes, that's increasing. And it is becoming thump, thump, thump. It's getting louder and louder. And now it's shaking. You can see the leaves shaking. And soon the trees are shaking. And through the clearance, a little bit of clearing, you can see some bright pink out there behind those leaves in the distance. And in minutes you come to know, as everything parts, you're seeing a bunch of wild African elephants charging at you. Only thing is they are bright pink in color. So you're in a situation they're charging at you bright pink elephants. So question to you, what's important and what's interesting? Interesting is that they are pink. Is it important?
No.
What is important? That they are elephants and they're going to be trampled. That's important. Okay. So first thing about test-driven development is it's a development approach. It's nothing to do with testing. So if you're only interested in testing, feel free to leave the room.
I have a question here. Actually, in my company, what we do is we are SDs here. We are not pure developers, and we do the this unit testing and the exit and entry criteria for test-driven development things. What we do is,
do you develop software?
We basically create the relation suites out of the test-driven, unit test cases. So our primary focus is when user story comes in exit criteria.
Testers can contribute. You see, this thing when we see testers separate from developers is really is a false division we have in our minds. Actually, development and testing are not two really separate things. They can be separate activities sometimes, but mostly they should be just done together. That's what we are also saying when you talk about Scrum or HTML programming. That's also what we are saying. So that's not a problem really. What you are saying is okay. Only thing is different people are doing the writing a test, and different people are doing the basically making them pass, which is not a crime in itself. May not be the best thing. May not be. I don't know. I really don't know.
So you are saying that you are in support the developer should do this.
Yeah. But there's a problem with developers also doing it. The problem with developers doing it is they don't know how to write tests. So they will normally write really, really poor tests. So that's
Sorry, can you go back to the previous point about the TDD, if that's okay with you?
yeah, do you do TDD? Like if you're just doing web design of web pages, you don't do TDD. Yeah. Because it's a development approach, you're developing software. Yes, as a means to develop, but it's not a testing approach, it's a development approach. So I've been to a company where they sent 20 testers to my TDD class and I just had to cancel the class. That's it. I can give you a 1 hour talk, but it's about it. Okay, so I'll give you a little demo. Or I'll take you through the code. I'll take you through some slides at like a breakneck pace. And then we will see how, I'm sorry about this, my machine was not just supposed to give up just as it started. So first of all, first thing you have to know is it's the practice. The practice is to write tests before you write any code, but also any detailed design. That's important. That is why it's called test-driven development, not test-driven coding. So in our minds, we don't separate all these activities of testing, coding, and programming as separate things. Just try to bring them all together. Then, basically the way to go about it is, these are very old slides. These are like 7-year-old slides, but these are the basics, and you can just follow them. Yes.
Why do we say that we'll have to actually design the test before the design? Design the test, write the test before the design?
Yeah, bit detailed design. You can have architecture, you can have some interfaces, all that is fine. Because then you're thinking of how one component is dealing with another component, that's okay. But component is at a much, component is a bunch of packages or a different architectural layer, right?
So are we saying that these are tests based on the acceptance criteria, or it is more than that?
Okay, I've not said anything about that yet. So I'm going to say that in a bit. Hold on. So you got red, green and clean, which is basically you write a test and it will not pass now. Okay. If you try to run it, it will fail, or you cannot even run it for whatever reasons because there's no code against it. Okay. Then you actually write just enough code to satisfy that test. And when you write just enough code to satisfy the test, and when you run the test, hopefully it just passes green. And that is, you achieved your goal as far as that test is concerned. But maybe you have not done it in the cleanest possible way. Maybe you hard-coded here and there. Maybe you cheated a little. Yeah, maybe you have done this thing, and that's all right. So that you repair when you do the clean or refactor at the end. Okay. So you do the cycle, and the way it works is, please ignore all this text, but it all starts out with a failing acceptance test. It starts with an acceptance test. What's an acceptance test?
From a user's perspective.
User's perspective, it's a functional test. So you can do that. So whether you're doing BI or whatever this lady is doing, you can always write an acceptance test at a functional level, and that's fine. And that's a part of TDD as well. These days people are fashionable and they call it ATDD, but this is always there. Yeah. So don't get. We are in the IT industry, so we try to use jargon. So there's something called ATDD, which is basically a part of TDD. Some people repackage it as BDD, which is behavior driven development, which got something a little different, but it boils down to the same thing. And you start there, and based on this, you write some failing tests. What tests? Usually unit tests, but sometimes occasionally it could be an integration test. You could do that, and then once you do that test, you try to make it pass, just like I said, just by writing a little bit of code. And then maybe a refactor, and then you add another failing test. Especially in the beginning, when you're not yet an expert, you normally write only one unit test at a time, go through the inner cycle and do it, then add 1 plus 1 plus 1 like this. If you're more experienced, occasionally you may add like 2, maybe 3 tests at one shot. Even if you're a complete expert, even I will not add more than two tests at a time. 2 would be the maximum number. And you go through the cycle enough times, and finally you got a piece of code that is working and a bunch of tests that are working, and then you are having the end-to-end functionality. Unfortunately, we will not be able to see the whole cycle today because we've got very little time. So we will not see the whole cycle, but what I will do is I will quickly take you through the inner cycle a few times. Okay. So 2 more minutes of slides, and then we'll do this. So a couple of other things you need to remember is TDD, the output of TDD is not tests. The end result of doing a test-driven development is not tests. It's actually the code. By the way, there will be some tests, and sure there will be some design. Okay? Are you confused? Where's the design coming from? Yeah, but in this case, yeah. Yes.
So to write the test, basically know which class I'm going to write, which class developer is going to design. Ready.
Okay.
So as a tester, I'm assuming things like this class will be available, this particular method will be available, and so on.
Fine. That's one way of looking at it. And one way of looking at it is what the gentleman said, basically that because you're coming up with a design. Another way of looking at it is saying that your code, by the time you are ending, has a structure. And that's a design. So your design is living in that code. It is not just design on paper. So haven't we seen design on paper? Design documents, you go and open the code, and then there is not quite matching. We have this, right? So that's the next thing is TDD is not N unit or J unit or whatever unit it is. You need good tests and you need the unit tests as well. All these things. So there are more slides. I'm not going to go. unit test. And there's no code. And they think and think and think, and their fingers just won't do the typing. So the first thing you have to know about this is you've got to anchor your test against some kind of acceptance. Okay. So we're going to take a very simple example. I'm just going to take the example of a money class. A money class is just a core class in a financial package that is able to, create, or is able to deal with this object, types of objects of the type money. That's all. That's all it's going to do. Okay. In this special case, your end user is not a real end user like a bank clerk or a manager or anyone. Your end user in this case is actually a programmer because there's a core package. Okay. I'm deliberately simplifying it because that's when we can just do something in 20 minutes. So here, then the first thing you are allowed to do is you are allowed to write tests. You're allowed to write code. Remember, when you do TDD, you'll have a bunch of tests and you have a bit of code. Okay? But these tests are also code. What you're allowed to do is you can write this code as long as it is not executable. As long as this code is not executable, you're allowed to write it. Because once it's executable, it is becoming tricky. So you try to write empty classes. So first thing we'll do is we'll just write an empty class. So we'll written an empty class called money, and now we will write a test for it. Time is running out. JP.
Withdraw.
Yeah. That's right. So we should be able to create. We should just simply be able to create it. Very simple, okay? We're going to return that much. It's as simple as that. So, rule of thumb tip, when you do TDD for any class or anything, when the very first test you write should be a very simple test. The way to solve big problems in computer science and in politics is the same. Divide and conquer. It's the same thing, okay? So don't think of all the things that money needs to do with its currencies and rounding off and all that. Don't do that. Then you'll just get stuck. So start with the simplest one. It is this. It is childishly simple. It probably will not work later. Don't worry about it. So, okay, now it won't even compile because it doesn't have this constructor. So, okay, fine. Sorry. So you will say, right. Now we run the test. If we run the test, please come up. Yeah, okay. So it looks brown, but it's supposed to be red. It's the red bar. So red, green, clean, that's the red bar. Okay. So then now so the test is failing, that is good, hooray. So now so we have to make this test pass. How can we make this test pass? What's the simplest way in which to make the test pass?
For this particular case, create a value for that and assign it.
String method that returns 3.
Yes. Oh, public string, sorry. We run this again. It still fails. Why does it fail now? No, because the z equals is. So we had a little problem in the test. But don't worry about it. Whatever is there, you quickly spot it and work on it. Now how do we refactor this? Here the refactoring is manual, Actually, you can do automated refactoring here also, but anyway, for now it's manual. So you will say public int value. Okay. And here you will say okay, so it passes again. So this thing has worked. But obviously this test is not that great because you just sent a 3 there. So what should you do? Just to interest of speeding up, I've given this kind of demo before, so I'll just copy this. Just start copying this because it's just going to take time. So what's the next test we can write? Okay, now we can create something with just a simple float, but what else can we do to create a money object? Another test?
Money type.
Means the type is float for now. This is just a bit of copy paste, but it's float for now. What else can we test?
Conversion.
Conversion is a bit advanced. We don't convert yet, but first we need a provision so that we can have multiple colors. Okay. So we just say test create FX money. Okay. Please, I ask for permission. I am lazy with typing. I'm just going to copy it. Okay, so what this has done is we have created 3.33 euros. So what do we do? Okay, now let's try to make it, the cheapest way to make it pass is to just in the toString to put euro. Can anyone spot a problem with that? So it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Because there should have been a semicolon, a colon. Will it work now? It probably won't. Yeah, the second test passed. Can you see this?
There are 2 tests. This has failed and this has passed. Okay.
Now the first one is failing because it's in INR. Actually, when we made the copy, we didn't actually run the test. So we didn't know whether it was passing or not. So INR. So if you give only one input, then the default is supposed to be INR. So we didn't have the default anywhere. So that is the problem. So we fix it. We fix it by saying We can fix it in a couple of ways, but here we can simply fix it by saying, oh, we have to declare a variable.